A warm welcome to everyone at Ultimate Meaning, the Theory of Samsara. Today it is my great pleasure to introduce you all to Venerable Jāgara. Welcome, Jāgara.
Yes, thank you.
Venerable Jāgara was born Martin Boisvert and took ordination in the Burmese tradition in 1979. He spent the last 44 years of his life as a mendicant, studying, practicing, and teaching the Buddha Dharma. As I understand it, you came to the Burmese tradition under the guidance of the American aerospace engineer Robert Hoover. Can you tell us a little bit about who Robert Hoover was and how he influenced your early days in the spiritual path?
Yes, so Mr. Hoover was an aerospace engineer, and then he was working in California, in Santa Cruz for the NASA.
For NASA?
Yeah, for NASA. So, but he was a very original person, and at some point he had seen in the newspaper that there were meditation courses offered in Burma and by Hubakin. So he decided to to try that. So it was in the early 60s. So he flew there and took a few courses, and then he was really impressed with that, and he changed his life. So. When I started the practice, then somehow, I was introduced to his presentation, and there was a retreat. So I joined the retreat, and what impressed me from him is that as a teenager, we are rebellious, we are questioning, and then anything that has to do with, a little bit of too conservative adult patterns and values, we don't accept it. So I was in that phase. I was in my teens, 17.
Rebellious phase.
Yeah, a little bit, So, but to see that guy who was an engineer, and then who was telling us that before he was practicing meditation, then he had a beer pot, beer belly, and then smoking cigars, and so you could see the picture of that type of person who would be a little bit like your father.
Oh, right, okay.
So, but the fact that he was, giving a living example of the change that occurred with his practice was very inspiring, and also the conclusion that he had come to, as having discovered a new dimension of being alive. He did not discard everything aside, and he said, "No, I'm going to become a monk, and society has no more things to offer me." But he took also the example of his teacher, Hubakin, who was an accountant and really involved social person, and from there he continued to work, and then also promoting that the change is a change from inside, and then you can still keep your engagements and then responsibilities
in the world.
In the world. So this was very, very important, and it had a very big impact on a teenager, because it tells you that, well, in any case, you have to be with society somehow, and then the contribution you are making to your society is what is going to be a part of your livelihood. So as a livelihood, we need to do something. And then also that something needs to be involving other people. So he was a good, quite a good.
And did you come across Hoover in Canada or in America?
The thing also is that I had an elder brother who was 1 year older than me, and then at that time he had gone to India. Before starting university, he took a year break. So he went to, just hitchhike up to India and looking for something. And just since you are, you represent a little bit the Tibetan tradition, right? So he was looking for something, the meaning of life.
Right.
What are we here for, and what shall we do, right? So he was going around there, and one of the places that he went to was Dharamsala, and then he spoke with Tibetan lamas, and then he was was speaking with a famous Lama, and then he asked him, "Oh, now I'm looking for spiritual practice that will feed and bring me more inspiration and more guidance. So I trust you, and I think you are a very good example, and I think I can learn something from you. And what shall I do?" So the Lama said, "Well, this is very good, my young chap, and what you have to do, you have to become a monk and, spend at least 10 years with us." So my brother, who is very active, and he said, "Well, I don't have 10 years to."
Okay.
So he ended up, so my brother, just put that aside a little bit, and then he continued his trip, and he had a course with S.N. Goenka. So when he had that course, then he really got what he wanted. So when
from
he came
Goenka's
back,
method.
yeah. So from there also he went to Sri Lanka, and then he just got acquainted with the monastic Buddhist scene, traditional scene of Buddhism over there.
And
so
this is in the early 70s, is it?
Yes,
Mid-70s?
yes, in 72. Right?
Oh wow!
So when he came back, I was waiting for my elder brother, coming back from this adventurous 1 year off, right, going on the trip, and then he said, "I found what I was looking for," and he said, "If you want, I can show it to you." So I said, "Yeah, I'm quite keen, to know what it's all about." And what we did is we waited until the Christmas vacation, and we found a place in the countryside, and then we went by ourselves, for a couple of weeks, just
like a retreat.
Yes, just like a retreat, very quiet, and then we just had the basic, things for eating, but a retreat, and kind of a serious retreat for this age. You wake up at 4 o'clock, and
how old were you at this time?
I was 16, 17.
Wow, really young.
Yes. So from there, then my brother didn't know. He didn't know much about,
Of course, 1 year is not enough time.
Yes, and also he just had the taste of the practice. So from myself, I was looking for a real teacher. I said, "Wow, there is some meat there. There is some meaning. So I want to know more." So looking for a teacher. My brother asked one of his friend that he had met in India, and then that had come back to Canada. Okay, now what's all about, in the Western scene? What's happening here? Well, and then there was nothing much happening in Canada, but we had heard that another student of Ubakin, Mr. Hover, was starting to give courses.
Oh, I see.
And then we found him, and he said that he was giving a course in Switzerland and in Germany, and that if I wanted, I could join. So
you had to travel to Europe in order to attend his teachings?
Yes.
Well, it just goes to show how difficult it was in those days for a Canadian to come across the Dharma, right?
Yes, like definitely in Canada, even when I came back, or even when I started to be more interested, even the books, and also if you put the frame into French, then there is not much literature. But even in English, you didn't have much. But there was definitely, the Tibetans had started to be involved, and then we had a general idea of, okay, now these are, the monks, and this is mostly with the Tibetans.
So they seem to be most popular and famous in those days.
Yeah.
So how did you eventually end up going to Burma and taking robes?
The thing is that as soon as I started the practice, I found that so wonderful. You just look at your man, and you find something that is, it's really deep. So I wanted to continue in this way, in this search, and then I asked my brother further, and he said, yeah, over there, in Asia, you have people who become monks, and then they go to the forest, and that's the only thing they do. They just practice meditation. I said, yeah. He said, yeah, you have a friend, my friend from Malaysia with whom I travel, what he wants to do is he comes back there, and then he goes in the forest, in Thailand you have these places, and then you have these monks. They're just practicing meditation. So I was interested, but he said, no, you are too young, and definitely my parents would not have agreed. So
yes, it says in the Vinaya that if your parents don't agree,
well, this is it.
And also you have to be 20 or something, right?
Yeah, for the Upasampada, for higher ordination. Yeah. So then, I was encouraged just to continue on with my studies, and so I found something that was quite interesting for me. And then only after 7 years did I decided to get involved there. Because also when I still was there, I did some research and
I see. So this was 1972, and then you took robes 7 years later. So you had time to think about it. It was not something you did out of haste.
No, and also not only I had to think about it, but I had to make my own practice by myself, because no one was practicing. I was still at high school, so I was coming back and then speaking about that to my friends, and they were smoking all kinds of things and going for parties, and this is just meaningless. It was just meaningless for them. It didn't make sense.
This really shows to me a karmic propensity. This desire to meditate at such a young age is very rare. To me, it gives me this faith and belief in previous lives. Because where can you establish these habits? Well, if it's not in this life. If you're only 16 years old. Yeah. And so then I heard that after this point, after you took robes in the Burmese tradition, then later you traveled to Sri Lanka and spent 15 years there.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yes, because I had met Jack Confield, who had just come back from Asia, having been a monk for 5 years. He had written a book on, by the way, it's quite a good book, Living Buddhist Masters. And then most of them are monastics, but some of them are lay people, from Thailand and Burma and then Sri Lanka. And then I asked him about the possibility to become a monk, and he said, no, this is really great, and then if I had the choice, to do that again, I would just really go. So he encouraged me somehow, and also, I wanted to investigate a little bit about the different methods, the different techniques of meditation that was available in this Theravada Buddhist world. Of course, you had the Tibetans, you had the Japanese, the Zen. Also, I was interested in all of that. But because I was introduced with the Burmese style of Theravada meditation, then I got, sponsorship and also information about places in Burma where I could ordain. But the conditions were very difficult in Burma. It was in 79, so there was still, the societal unbalance and hardship. So it was you could not travel around. So I went directly to the Mahasi Sayadaw's meditation center. Then I practiced there for about 3 months, and I was not used to Asia, so I became kind of sick. And then I was suggested, maybe you can try Sri Lanka. Like I wanted to go around in Burma, and he said, no. If you don't stay at our center, then we are not going to have, the visa prolongation of
So for a Westerner, it's not possible at that time to travel around Burma.
Yes, exactly. So either you stayed in the monastery, and practice a meditation, or you don't get a visa. Already to have a 3 months visa was very difficult.
It's the same thing to this day in India and Nepal. Most of the Westerners are just chasing visas most of the time they're there. It becomes a great obstacle to their practice. Because in order to stay in the East, then they have to have some kind of legal paperwork. And it can be a real problem.
Yeah. But in Sri Lanka, it was not so much so in these days. It was very easy. You could get a 1-year visa, and then if you're a monk, then also it was not difficult. So every year you had to fill the papers so that you get your renewal, and then you could stay there as long as you wanted. Yeah.
Is there a significant difference in the practice between Burma and Sri Lanka? Is there something specific about the Burmese tradition?
Well, of course, you have the cultural characteristics that are a little bit different. But as for the Buddhism, it's the same, except that the Burmese gave emphasis on the Abhidhamma, and also the Burmese seem to have kept or revived more the meditation practices, whereas in Sri Lanka, Buddhism came first to Sri Lanka quite a long time ago, and then at some point, because of the society's turmoil with wars and all of that, they decided to give importance to the texts, not the practice. So all the monks, they said, no, we want to keep that alive for the other generation. So what shall we do? We should practice. We should, give the example of meditation. And then other monks said, no, we should keep the text and then really, protect that the theoretical.
So this is a topic that we've covered in our channel sometimes. It's about the transmission of realization and the transmission of scriptures.
Yeah. So in Sri Lanka, they gave importance to the, the scripture. So, they became scholars and, they emphasized the text. So in Burma also it was the same, because both these countries exchange
their knowledge and shared
their knowledge, and sometimes if they had difficulty, they were sending emissaries over there. There was always a sharing of.
So would you say that this tradition of meditation is stronger in Burma than it is in Sri Lanka to this day?
Yes.
Higher level.
Yes.
Realization, maybe.
Very possible, because the practice itself was encouraged. Mm-hmm. And then also it got popularized, with Lady Sayadaw, and so even lay people were able to practice. So the monks also were teaching, and you find that in Burma, it's kind of impressive. You see monasteries, and the difference of with the monasteries is that in Burma you have hundreds of monks,
right,
and then also hundreds of nuns, and sometimes it can come to the thousands. So a meditation center can accommodate 500 meditators, and then 1,000 meditators. So wherever you go in Burma, many of the temples there, they have an area for the practice. So when the monks
specifically dedicated to practice.
Yes, exactly. So
sort of like a Zendo.
Yes. So you have a section just for meditation, and then a section just for the kind of ceremonies and usual religious
pujas and things like that.
Yeah. But sometimes also you see it is both. Like I stayed at some point in a monastery in a big city in the mountains, and then there was a regular meditation practice for lay people. In the morning, people could come there, they could use it all day, and then also in the evening also they will come there, and then every day the monk was giving a discourse about the practice, and just a discourse to which you could attend and just listen and be in this atmosphere of Dharma, and then also have a few moments of quietness. So they will gather for 1 or 2 hours and practice as well.
So then, from what you've said, what I gather is that when you went to Sri Lanka, then you mainly focused on the study branch. Is that correct?
Not necessarily, because at the beginning I was really keen for the practice. So yes, so I wanted to practice, and most of my friends also were for the practice. The practice is what was the main attraction for us to be there. But still, with the practice, and then meeting also elderly monks, especially Western monks who had been there. You didn't have much, but the few that had been there, and then that had remained there, were we were talking with them from time to time, and then. Especially to young monks, they will say that, like a Westerner, they will say, no, if you're a monastic, then there is more time, and then you are dealing with the Buddha's teaching, so it's better to be acquainted just at least for the minimum for you to understand the Pali directly. So from there, then when you get into these texts, then already it opens the door to a little bit more of the theory. And also the monasteries, many of the monasteries there, you have big libraries, and in Sri Lanka, Westerners had been there for almost a century, especially after the...
Really?
Yes.
I'm quite surprised.
Yes.
I suppose since the time of the British Empire.
Yes, but for them to become monks was triggered by the wars in Europe.
Really?
Yes. So we see that many, like a lot of Germans were there, got there interested.
They were escaping conscription in World War II?
No, they were just, it had been the war over there, so some were escaping, they didn't want to be involved in war, like in the first war, you had some
yes.
there, then they just went there because of, they were interested in Buddhism, but also they didn't want to participate.
So do you think their minds were turned towards spirituality because of all the suffering that they saw?
Well, this is it. So especially after the Second War, then there was a big question in the mind of people over there. Okay, now what are we doing? We have destroyed our country, our cultures, and then it's just a massacre everywhere, and everything. Is so. You had a lot of some, just moved there. So some of them had been there for a while, and then they got, the first Westerners that came, especially to Sri Lanka. Some, a few went to Burma, but it was a little bit more difficult. But those who came to Sri Lanka, it was also the time when Westerners, like at the beginning of the 20th century, they were starting to discover a little bit about Buddhism. So first, Buddhism was a kind of, alien kind of philosophy or religion. It didn't make much sense, but at some point it started to make sense, and at some point they really got the conviction that there was some real good stuff there. So these first
once they looked under the surface.
So the first, the first Europeans that were there, whether they were German or British, because you also had famous British guys that got involved there. They decided to make these teachings, although it was practical. They decided to give their time, to make these teachings more available to the world. And then they got involved into translation. So these fantastic translators like Nyanatiloka, German, and then Ñāṇamoli, a British person who had come there after the war. This was their, one of their motives. They wanted to understand a bit more the intricacies and the details of the Buddhist philosophy. So they translated a lot of these things.
And so when did your study in Pali begin? Was it in Sri Lanka? Or
yes, it was in Sri Lanka. But also, after a few years being a monk, then I thought, well, it's a language, so I better learn it well. And then I got introduced. I was quite lucky. I got introduced to a university specialist, a professor at the university, and she was a great scholar in Pali, and she knew she was fluent in English, and she offered, 2 or 3 of us, the other Western monks who were 2 or 3, and then she offered us a private class. So for about a year, I was with her, and then after that, then I could continue by myself.
So this is a question I get on YouTube quite a lot. People asking, how do you approach learning Tibetan or Sanskrit or Pali? So what are some of the advice that you can give people?
You see, before I got involved with this serious kind of studies, which is not necessary for lay people, some of my monks' friends who are not scholars, but still valued Pali, because this is where you get the information of the theoretical aspect. They were telling me just to be acquainted with the basic, some very simple books, like Johansson, Johansson, where they take a text and then, you have they start right away. They start with a short text or a paragraph, and then they give the translation, and then they give the vocabulary together with the grammatical rules that are coming together with that. So little by little, you start to be acquainted with the language. Especially like if you are staying in Sri Lanka, then the Sinhala, the language of the people,
Sinhalese.
the Sinhalese is very similar to Pali.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah. It's like Italian and Latin.
Latin. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you know Sinhala, then.
So how many years did it take you to become fluent in Pali or to learn Pali?
You just gradually, just little by little, and also being there, speaking with people, you just you come to pick up, the whole thing, and then it becomes more easy just to think even.
To think in Pali.
Yes, and in
I found that with studying Tibetan. At some point, I started dreaming in Tibetan. And everything was happening in Tibetan.
Well, this is a good sign. So when you start to think and to dream, then that means the system has accepted
to go
it.
deep. Yeah. You said previously that your brother had become involved in the Goenka method.
Yes,
that's correct.
Yeah.
But I also heard that you, for some time, that you taught Goenka Vipassana.
Yes, my first years were introduced with this teaching, with this approach. So I was very enthusiastic with it. So I continued. When I was in the West, I didn't have much alternatives except that sometimes in the mid 70s they opened the IMS. With Jack Onfield and Joseph Goldstein, so already it was a different approach. So they were more open in the Goenka, but still myself, I was very influenced by the conditioning that they give you in that organization. And they say no, don't mix technique. This is the best technique, and also you see the benefits of practicing in this way. So I was going with this in mind, with this with this type of conditioning. So just after 1 or 2 years of being a monk, then Goenka had come to Sri Lanka, and then he gave a retreat there. And soon after that, I was I got in touch with him again, and then he asked me if I would like to be a teacher in his tradition. So I said, I was still young, and for me it was very appealing. It was very appealing, so I decided to do so.
And it's very popular in the West.
Yes,
and
but
many people have done it.
Yeah, but at some point I took a little bit my distance because I saw the.
So what would you say is specific about Goenka's method, or makes it distinct or different from the other meditations that you studied?
Well, the point also with the Goenka method is that they wanted to make something very practical for lay people. So lay people with a busy life, they just have a short time to get acquainted and then to do their practice. So they make a kind of format that is very intense, a lot of sitting, and it's very intense.
How many hours a day?
It starts at wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you end up at 9 o'clock. But it's a lot of sitting. Whereas if you compare with the Mahasi method, although if you are at the monastery in Burma with Mahasi Sayadaw, you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then you go to bed at 11.
So and it's the same in our retreats.
Okay,
like 3:30.
Yes, but there is more emphasis on the continuity. Also, they teach. They have meditation. The method for walking practice. Whereas in the Goenka, they don't deny.
Oh, they don't have this kind of.
No, but they don't. It's not encouraged. If you are walking, then it's not.
Not forbidden.
It's not forbidden, but it's, they are kind of
purist.
They really give emphasis on the sitting.
Sitting in.
Yes, but also the difference also is that because you are sitting a lot with the Goenka, then you build up a lot of samadhi. But the problem there is that during the retreats, you can get a lot of samadhi. But you get out of your retreat, and then the samadhi
Fades away.
Fades away. So that means your practice is fading away. So this is one thing. Sometimes also with too much samadhi, also the mind can get a little bit unbalanced because it's too too concentrated.
Yeah, we notice this problem for a lot of people. They become kind of spaced out. And so they're both called vipassana, for example. The meditation you do in Burma, they have a Vipassana meditation, and the Goenka is a Vipassana meditation. But they have the same name, but are they the same type of meditation, or are they very different?
They are the same. Basically, they are the same. But if you don't know, you think they are different. But these methods are based on the texts, and then the text also over there. Traditionally, they depend on the commentaries. So if you look at the commentaries, it's really kosher. So although these two schools will compete with each other, or will sometimes prove their point, as something better, still they speak about the same thing. They speak about different approaches. It's just the approaches that is
the methods that are different.
Yes, just the way you approach the practice.
And so what differentiates shamatha from vipassana? What makes them different?
I think it's the way you look at the object and also the purpose for which you are doing the practice. So samatha, really the purpose mostly is to calm the mind, to bring more serenity and more concentration, clarity also is also a purpose for samatha. Whereas vipassana, then vipassana is more analytical, and it's more by way of inquiry about characteristics or aspects of phenomena, aspects of reality.
For example, is meditating on the impure substances of the body a form of vipassana in your tradition?
Not as such, because it's still, the difference here. Like I said that the difference is between objects. So if we are to follow that, line, then objects can be seen as concepts, and objects can be seen as a paramata, just as a process. So this is the difference. So if you see the body as objects of impurity, so you develop
conceptually.
So conceptually you have you see parts of anatomy, and also conceptually also you have the sense of repulsion. So the repulsiveness is coming into your mind, and this is also what you are emphasizing. So it's a specific characteristics that are conceptual somehow. So based on these concepts attributed to the objects, then you develop these images. I mean, it can also be related to to images, and then you concentrate your mind on that, and there is an effect there. Also, the effect is conditioned. The effect also is purposeful. So you practice asubha when there is too much lust in the mind. So it's really purposeful.
Intention.
Yes, so all these samatha practices don't need to be done by everyone. They are like a medicine box where you have all kinds of medicines. If you are sick for this, if you are sick from anger, which is a disease, then this is the type of meditation you are doing. If you are
so there's techniques for the different mind poisons, and so you don't necessarily have to practice all of them.
Not necessarily, and this is why also whether we speak about the Theravada or the Mahayana, it's a Buddhist teaching. So the approach, the pedagogical approach, is considering the characters, temperament. So depending on the character of some student,
somebody's disposition.
So this depending on the disposition, then the teacher will say, well, better off you do this or you do that. Whereas vipassana, so this is in regard to samatha. So samatha is more conditioning the mind. Samatha also is more as a dynamic, more oriented towards directing your mind. So
focusing on an object.
Yeah, so you direct your mind in a specific area.
Like on a concept or on an idea.
Yes, so yes.
Or physical sensations in the body.
So it's you are doing something. It's a training. So you train. This is why they speak about the training. So the mental training is to be able. I think you do that with mandalas or with the colors. You just train your mind to keep that, and then to keep the image
stable.
The mind really gets occupied with some exercises that are going to bring the cooling effect that are aimed at. Whereas vipassana, you don't, you are not there to, you try to understand the conditioning, and then you try to see if there are things outside the conditioning. So
to understand the conditioning itself rather than to focus on an object.
Yes, but the understanding the conditioning involves that you are looking at objects, but you see the objects in different ways. You see the objects, on a more intrinsic
way.
Yes,
their sort of essential nature.
Yes, essential natures of characteristics.
So would a valid insight of vipassana in the Theravadan tradition, for example, be the understanding of no self? Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Well, also, we speak about temperament. So depending on your approach, depending on the things that naturally you have been not a specialist, but you have been developing. Then you will see or you will emphasize aspects of reality that could be different than another person. So we have the three characteristics or the 4 characteristics. So sunyata or anatta is just one of them, the non-self.
Okay.
So some people will really be going for that naturally, or this is especially like people who are wise, or there will be that kind of
attracted to emptiness.
Well, yeah, but sunyata is just like it is part of the aspect of anatta.
Okay.
So
no self.
Basically, you have the meditation, or seeing the characteristic of impermanence, anicca, seeing the characteristics of unsatisfactoriness, or suffering, or dukkha, and then the third one is anatta. But anatta can, like these other two, they can also include slight nuances that are, but still the nuances are still in relation to this main characteristic. So this is why, if you compare philosophy that is really emphasizing sunyata, like Mahayana, then some of the their principles or their exposition will be available also in the old the Theravada texts.
So this is a really deep topic, and I want to ask you if maybe in future we might have a little discussion just on meditation, because I think there are many people who are very interested in this topic, and it's good for them to see different presentations. And you've been doing it for years, so you have experience you can share. So if you would allow me to return one day, and maybe we could have just a talk on meditation, I think it might be beneficial. How do you find reintegrating into the West? I mean, you spent a lot of time in Sri Lanka and Burma and traveling around India, but now you've come to, I'm right in saying you've come to settle in Canada now, kind of as your base.
Yes.
How long have you been here?
Maybe like continuously, about 3 years.
3 years. And when you first came back, did you feel a kind of culture shock, or?
Well, yes. Yes, because like I spent about 40 years over there. So not only I have families and friends, but also the environment, the cultural environment is very different. The values are different. So over there, as a monk, you are part of society. You are just part of society. There is no problem. But here, you are an eccentric. You are a marginal, and then you are a weirdo.
Weirdo, yeah.
So
yes, I felt that.
Well, this is it. So then already it's a challenge. You say, okay, now what is this? People don't.
They relate to you in a completely different way, right?
Yes, and they don't know how to relate also.
So did you find it difficult, sort of reconditioning yourself to the West or keeping your vows, for example?
Yes, but I was lucky, to have friends who had visited me and they understand my position. And some of them, like here, some friends had been monks before, so they know so they support and they are patient also with the difficulties that I could come with. My family also is very understanding, like my brothers and even my sisters and my parents had come to see me over there, so they know, my conditioning somehow. So in this way, I think this is a big deal. At least you know that some people know your trajectory, your background, and then they accept it. So this is fine. But still, for the society in general, it is very challenging. And I think this is very challenging to the point that it's even questionable where if a monastery or monastic is purposeful, is useful in the West.
Use in the West.
Yeah, because it can even create the opposite. I mean, we don't want to convert to another religion, and then what is this? We don't want to to shave our head or just anyway, the issues.
I do. Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, this was one of the main issues with my family, was that I shaved my head, which I thought was a bit strange because it's completely outer, right?
Yes.
But nowadays, many people shave their heads, so it's okay.
Yes.
It's very common.
Yes.
So now that you're in the West, what is your how has your practice changed? What is your main practice? And also what are your Dharma activities? How do you do what a monk should do in the West?
Yes, I remember I was speaking with an elder friend over there, and then he was a Canadian. Now he's still over there, and he was telling me that when he had come to Canada, back to Canada for a little while, then his main practice was metta. So I think it's a good thing. So practicing. Although we practice metta over there, the loving kindness and compassion. Here, it can be an important aspect of the practice. But the practice itself also, at some point, the practice is we are our temple. So the practice is with us. It doesn't matter whether you're in a fantastic natural scenery or in a city or in the West or in the East. The challenges are going to be there because some environments are more demanding than others. But still, if we know, and then if we remember that the practice is inside, then nothing else outside could affect us. Although it will. Still, the deepest values and meaning will be inside your heart, so you don't care so much. But still, as a way of living, it is still questionable. But in my case, it's fine because I can be on the retirement age, so and also I live almost
in Canada and
yes. So also
and you have Dharma friends who can support you.
Yes, exactly. And I live a little bit in seclusion, so it's not I am not too much affected by that. And my Dhamma activities is sometimes I have been teaching retreats. I kept in touch with people who were interested to practice. So from time to time I did give some retreats, and I found that good because people come there with an interest, and most of them get something out of it. So you feel that you share. If we in societies in life, if we don't have that feeling of giving something, when we only receive, it's not enough. So in this case, it is good.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences on the Buddhist path. I think everyone will see that to be something that's been really beneficial for us. And I really enjoyed hearing your story. And so thank you very much.
Yes,
and I hope again that we might have another conversation.
Yes, my pleasure. Yeah.